All right, the consequences of China's grip on the global supply chain clearer than ever after the FDA announced the first drug shortage linked to the coronavirus outbreak. In his new op-ed, Florida Senator Marco Rubio lays out just what we can do about the power China has over our public health and economy. After all, they're making a lot of our drugs. He joins us right now with more. Senator, this is outrageous. I'm so glad you're on top of it. What percentage of drugs are made for America in China?
Well, the truth is we don't know the actual complete number. Here's what we do know. About 80% of the active ingredients, the different components of a drug, about 80% of those come from abroad, and the overwhelming majority of that 80% are manufactured in China. So the drug may ultimately be assembled here, but all the components of it, we rely on China for it. So just as an example, a few years ago there was an explosion at a laboratory in China, and it disrupted the global supply of certain antibiotics. So these are not just COVID-19, coronavirus drugs we're talking about here. We're talking about things people use on a daily basis, especially generics. And that is because we allowed offshoring. For years, the market basically said, well, it's cheaper to make it over there, let's make it over there. It's more profitable for the companies. So not only did we lose those jobs in the United States, we lost this capacity, and now we don't know if there are going to be shortages. We anticipate there will be in certain drugs because those factories have been shut down because of the virus.
And also they threatened on March 5th that they were going to hold back those drugs. They don't like the fact that we're blaming them for what they did, and that's launched this virus on the whole world.
Yeah. Their official newspaper, the Communist Party, wrote an op-ed basically mocking the United States, saying you should be thanking us, you should be apologizing to us. If we cut you off from your drugs, you guys would fall off the cliff and go into some inferno. I forgot the language they use now. They actually specifically singled out Florida as part of it. So what it tells you is that they realize that in a moment of crisis, let's say the US and China have a showdown over something and they can threaten to cut us off of our pharmaceutical supplies, they could trigger a domestic problem here that would make it difficult for us to confront them. It's a tremendous amount of leverage. So we need to invest and make available investments and flow investments into rebuilding that capacity in places where we have critical shortages, not just pharmaceuticals, but rare earth minerals all across the board. It's good jobs for Americans, and it's good for our national security and economic security.
And the president hears you. He's going to look to the executive order on the Buy American Act. I'm going to look for that, Senator. We're going to have you back. We're going to stay on top of this even when we beat this virus. Meanwhile, looking at election 2020, the Hispanic vote in Florida really caught our attention. And we compare it to 2016 and 2020. In Florida, in March, 45% of the Hispanic vote in that state approve of or supportive of Joe Biden, as opposed to 18% of blacks. When you look at where in 2016 versus Clinton, it was 36% with 5% support with Clinton. So he's going to be a little bit more formidable in your state.
The president or Biden?
Biden.
Well, yeah, look, obviously we'll see those numbers move out, but the president, according to the polling, is doing very well among Hispanic American voters, and that doesn't surprise me. We have a large percentage of people in Florida that came from Colombia, from Nicaragua, from Venezuela, and from Cuba. These are countries in which people have either fled instability, like the drug wars that occurred in Colombia, or fled socialism in Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba. And the president's position on those issues, he's been a great friend to Colombia. He has been stronger than any president in American history, against the Castro regime, against now the Maduro regime, and against the Ortega regime in Nicaragua. And so these voters not only know that socialism doesn't work, they're also grateful for what he has done to confront these tyrants that destroyed their lives and their families' lives.
Yeah, Bernie Sanders' statement on 60 Minutes just rocked his hopes of winning over the Cuban community. And I think it's also important too. The president's been tough on the border, but he doesn't want it to affect his march when it comes to the Hispanic community. That was the fear after the autopsy, after Mitt Romney lost. Has he been able to, in your mind, overcome that?
Well, there's a great disconnect between reality and what people up here in Washington and the media and in political circles talk about. The notion that because you're a Hispanic and your parents or you are an immigrant, you are in favor of illegal immigration is absurd. The overwhelming majority of Hispanics in this country are either legal immigrants or the descendants of legal immigrants. And they themselves appreciate and understand how important it is for a country to be able to protect its processes. By the way, this is not unique to the United States. In Mexico right now, the polling after polling shows the overwhelming majority of Mexicans want the Mexican government to get stricter about migration.
Right.
And we're facing the same issues in the Bahamas and in other places.
Absolutely.
So I just think there's this notion that because you're an immigrant, somehow you're in favor of illegal immigration. You are not. Now, you may know individual cases of people that you feel terrible for, but I think that's true for the whole population. But so again, I think that's an important, there is a difference between saying you're against immigration and against illegal immigration.
Right.
And immigration, like anything else we have, has to have laws and has to have rules, and those laws and those rules are only as good as your willingness to follow it. So you can be pro-immigration and still have a good set of rules that we follow.
All right, Senator, we'll stay on both these things. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.